If the Premier had any doubts about the strength of the Hunter's wine industry, they surely paled in significance to the arguments put to him today. The flow on tourism benefits, the jobs and the export opportunities were all outlined in a report presented by local growers. And as this $1.5 billion industry continues to grow, the future is now almost guaranteed with a new $10 million irrigation pipeline. After a spectacular start to the operation, water will now flow to more than 400 properties.
Here's an industry that said we will do something for ourselves, and it's a reflection on how this country works in delivering social partnerships.
But this is just the first drop, with a loan for more than $6 million for the Broke to Fordwich pipeline now secure.
It will service some 65 vineyards, and in so doing will create jobs, encourage further expansion in wine exports and develop tourism.
The Premier's visit was also used as an opportunity to lobby for help with a long-term problem, the state of the local roads.
I hope that we'll be able to convince you in the not too distant future to be able to give us a hand to get that fixed.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
We have the Minister, Jackie Kelly, coming here in November to view the site and hopefully provide some potential funding for that building.
According to the New South Wales Fire Brigade, these trucks are the best that money can buy, and it's a lot of cash. At $400,000 each, they're equipped to carry 6 personnel with a 15-year lifespan. Premier Carr congratulated Varley Engineering for delivering on the contract to construct 8 vehicles. And no matter what your title is or how old you are, the phrase "boys and their toys" still applies. Then off to another function, essentially the same service but a different backdrop. Premier Carr officially opened the new Bendulba Salisbury station near Dungog for the Rural Fire Service, putting emphasis on its volunteers.
It's just as important in the everyday life of country communities in this state as people organise themselves for the inevitability of fires.
The $52,000 station took 4 months to construct and is a far cry from its tin shed predecessor. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
On a whirlwind visit to Newcastle, Sir Gustav paid his respects to Charles Perkins.
I personally did not particularly ally myself with his policies over this last little period, but you know, you have to take a person over the whole of a lifetime, and over the whole of a lifetime he's made a wonderful contribution.
Reconciliation is close to the heart of Sir Gustav, who has been using his term as Australian of the Year to promote the cause. But while he says significant steps have been made, personally he would like to see the Howard government do more.
There are some aspects on the more symbolic side of reconciliation where the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation has some differences with the government. For example, the apology.
Sir Gustav shared his vision for Australia at a gathering with school children in Civic Park. He left a legacy of his visit by contributing to a reconciliation banner painted by students. He was also entertained by a local dance troupe. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Police got their man in the end, but their means are in question. Matthew Webster was sentenced to 14 years in prison for raping and murdering Stockton schoolgirl Lee in 1989. A stinging Police Integrity Commission report said today Webster was probably bashed in custody by police and could have escaped his murder charge, according to the lawyer who originally pursued the case.
Where the evidence might be tainted, where there is misconduct, it places a question mark over that. It means that perhaps if this evidence had come to light 10 years ago, you wouldn't have any man in jail.
But is this a case now where we've got an innocent man in jail or not?
I don't know that that would necessarily be the case at all.
The Integrity Commission has recommended Detective Sergeant Lance Chaffee, the man in charge of the case, be sacked for not investigating the alleged assault, while 5 detectives should face criminal charges. They are Senior Constables Mark Plant, Kel Graham, Reuben Thurbon, along with Sergeants Kane and Connolly.
Police clearly are not above the law. Police must obey the law. It is now up to the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Commissioner to take the matter further.
The Police Association says more serious allegations of sexual assaults on witnesses or deliberately failing to prosecute suspects for murder were dismissed by the report, while assault allegations remain to be proved.
The ocean baths have been Peter Wormsley's life for the last 24 years. He grew up 2 blocks away, then returned to the baths as live-in caretaker in 1976, where he met his wife Jan. Now, after living in the best flat in town for so long, he says it's time to pass on the reins.
It's a pretty demanding job because of the hours you have to work, and it's pretty lonely here. I mean, our neighbours are saltwater seagulls and hippies. Saltwater hippies I call the boardriders, good mates of mine.
Peter has endured some of the worst weather the ocean can dish up, including the big seas of '97 that caused $200,000 damage. He claims he doesn't look his age because the salt air has preserved him, and admits moving away from the breakers will be tough.
I said to Jan last night, you know, this is going to be hard to take, I suppose, on the day. I might appear to be a bit rough. I'm an old softy too, don't worry about that. I suppose some tears will be shed.
Meantime, local beaches have again been littered with dead muttonbird carcasses. The short-tailed shearwaters encountered bad weather on their recent Pacific migration. Thousands died of exhaustion. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It seems inexplicable. A small car with two men travelling east through Buchanan veers suddenly and sharply onto the wrong side of the road, head-on into a truck. The car's driver is dead in an instant.
We believe that they're all from Aberdeen and Curry at this time. We're going to have some time in identifying the deceased gentleman. We might have to rely on fingerprint evidence at this stage.
The small sedan was cleaved by the impact. Skid marks show just how little time the truck driver had to react.
People don't realise that when travellers are travelling at the speed limit, in this case it's a 100 kilometre zone, they're travelling at a closing speed of 200 kilometres an hour, which is 60 metres a second.
In shock, the truck driver is being treated at Curry Hospital, but was lucky there wasn't more traffic heading towards him. With the impact, he lost control, skidding across the wrong side of the road, ending in a paddock. The 44-year-old passenger in the sedan lives in Weston and is now in a critical condition after being airlifted to John Hunter Hospital. John Renshaw Drive was closed for more than 3 hours while the wreckage was cleared.
While the Salvation Army has been in the eastern Lake Macquarie area for many years, it's never had a home of its own. That is, until now, with the East Lakes Centre on the Pacific Highway at Belmont, a facility made possible through several years of planning, hard work and donations from local churchgoers.
Great generosity, and it's only because our people find great value in who they are and value in belonging to our church.
The centre includes a 600-seat worship and community auditorium, space for counselling and support groups, an administration area and a market garden and kitchen that the Salvos are keen to use for Work for the Dole programs. While some newly laid turf was stolen last night, preparations for tomorrow afternoon's official opening today pressed on regardless.
So I think that our church is going to be a lighthouse to people in the community, whereas before we were using Belmont High School and a few other places for our activities. Now we've got a building, people are able to see that the Salvation Army is alive and well within the area.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News. The Pudding Kitchen at Adamstown Uniting Church provided a fitting venue for the launch of Mission Australia's Christmas Appeal. Aside from raising money for the church's many charity activities, the puddings will also be on the menu at the Mission's traditional Christmas Day lunch in Civic Park.
Lunch in the park is really an opportunity for people who may be alone at Christmas or who want to try and share that with other people, and especially for people in the community who are disadvantaged to come together and have a good Christmas dinner.
While the event is the culmination of the appeal, Mission Australia is also seeking gift donations and is preparing Christmas hampers. Other groups are also getting ready for a demanding festive season. These TAFE designs just some which will grace the catwalk at a fashion parade next Thursday night at Newcastle Workers Club. The event aims to raise a majority of the $10,000 needed for a special hamper program run by the Magic Moments Foundation, in which people nominate others in need.
Maybe somebody down the street that's lost their job or in emotional difficulties, where somebody just nominates them and they end up receiving a hamper and they don't know who it's from, which is the lovely part about it.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
The blaze shattered a quiet night in Rutherford. Firefighters from 5 stations getting to work just after midnight at the Maitland Baptist Church Long Day Care Centre. As flames leapt skyward, the heat was so intense there was little firefighters could do to save the $1 million building. The heat and smoke trapped beneath the metal roof led to a rare phenomenon known as a fire rollover.
Once the sufficient heat got into that smoke, it would have probably very likely a phenomenon called rollover that would have actually occurred with the smoke, where the smoke actually catches on fire itself.
Daylight showed the true extent of the damage. Some families, unaware of the destruction, arrived to drop off their children.
Absolutely devastated, you know. I guess I can't find words to describe the feelings, but we'd worked hard for this 5 years to have this centre really operating well, and we'd achieved that in this last 12 months. And to see it all going up in flames is just really hard.
Investigators believe arson was not involved.
Very possibly an electrical fault up in around the roof level.
The church will use insurance money to rebuild. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Kevin Naismith and Danny Wasley were friends for 25 years until Naismith killed Danny and shot Mark Banks on the same August day last year. Today's guilty verdict was little comfort for the victims' families.
We still will await sentencing and hope that the full weight of the law is brought to bear on this pathetic individual for the callous and heinous crimes he has committed.
A protected witness said he saw a blood-covered Naismith standing over Mr Wasley's body, then heard gunfire inside the Charlestown house where he found the accused, with Mark Banks dead on the floor. He said Naismith told him, no bodies, no gun, no crime, as they took the corpses to Stockton, burning them in the sand. The cover-up involved dumping the victims' cars as though their disappearance was a drug deal gone wrong, and that Naismith set fire to his own garage to support his claim that he'd been warned he'd be next. Naismith denied it all, telling the jury a mystery man killed Mark Banks and then threatened his family. He said the protected witness must have murdered Danny Wasley. It took the jury just 2 hours to deliver its verdict, guilty on both counts. When Naismith heard the news, he dropped his head and began to cry. Naismith will be sentenced in Sydney next Wednesday. David McElwain, NBN News.
Mountain bikers have common traits. They love their sport and they love to go fast. And former World Junior Champion Nathan Rennie is one of the best.
Why mountain bike? Why not?
At 19, he rides professionally in America and has only just returned home to race the Australian Series.
They say if you love your job, you don't work a day ever. So I'm just doing that.
One of his best mates, Jared Rando, is also his biggest rival and happens to be the defending champion of the National Series. But for him, winning isn't the priority either.
Just going to have some fun and see how I go. I'm not too worried.
He certainly doesn't care for going slow, but when watching him rip into the Mount Sugarloaf course, the question of why still remains.
It's just a buzz, it's just fun. I couldn't imagine doing anything better.
Actual competition starts tomorrow. Hunter soccer fans voted with their feet. 15,123 made their way into Marathon Stadium, but not all came through the gates. Newcastle Knight Adam McDougall and major sponsor of Newcastle United, Lloyd Scott, receiving a grand welcome. But the cheer they got was nothing compared to that reserved for the team running out for the first time on home soil. Before the game, there were questions over the surface, but no one bargained for this. But United was left wondering what happened when Nick Meredith pierced a keeper and 7 defenders to score the first. 2 minutes later, off another set piece, another goal, this time to Peter Grierson. United came out firing in the second half, but this miss by Brad Widgerek summed up their night in attack. Newcastle had their chances, but the opportunities came and went just as quick. Not even pint-sized striker John Bonavalia could capitalise up front, and 2-0 was how it stayed.
If that's the best we can defend at set pieces, well, we better go back to kindergarten. It's just not good enough.
Carol Whiteside was diagnosed with breast cancer after having her first mammogram. Now, 6 years on, she says she's beaten the disease.
From my point of view, it is ancient history, but there's no room for complacency, and I really need to look after my health and have all the checks that I need to have, including my annual mammogram.
Carol was just one of 320 people who turned out to commemorate National Breast Cancer Day in Newcastle. Pink flowers were scattered in the Civic Park fountain to pay tribute to the victims of this disease. Breast cancer is a major cause of death in women in Australia, claiming around 2,500 lives each year.
Breast cancer is a community dilemma, and we need to have days like Australia Breast Cancer Day so that the rest of the community can become aware of it. The time of breast cancer diagnosis is not a good time to be learning what there is to do with it.
National Breast Cancer Day is a way of raising awareness about the disease, its symptoms and treatments.
I would like to urge every woman to have a mammogram once they reach the age of 40.
New research has, however, found younger women are more likely to be diagnosed with advanced breast cancer than older women, with those aged between 20 to 39 most at risk of having it spread to their lymph nodes. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Lionel Desange, who was in business with John Stewart in the New South Wales Equestrian Centre at Lochinvar, has been charged with conspiracy to murder his partner. A week before Christmas, 3 men came into the Lochinvar house, cut Mr Stewart's throat and assaulted his wife, almost strangling her with a cable tie. Gary Brown is already in jail for his part in the attack. The Crown alleges he was to be paid $30,000 by Lionel Desange to kill John Stewart. In evidence, Brown said he offered Anthony Peters and Aaron Moss $10,000 each to help. On the night of the attack, he says he met Moss at Newcastle's Delaney Hotel before dropping off Moss's girlfriend and going to the nearby Queen's Wharf Brewery. Brown said they did this to be seen before going to Lochinvar. They attacked the stewards and left them, driving back to Newcastle covered in blood, changed their clothes and then mingled with the crowd, leaving the Castle nightclub. The next day, he and Moss drove to Sydney to see Lionel Desange. According to Gary Brown, they met in Paddington on Oxford Street before winding their way through the back alleys to exchange the cash. When he asked Desange what was wrong, the accused told him, "The cops have already been to see me and you can read about it in the papers." Brown says he gave some money to Moss, took $3,000 for himself and visited Anthony Peters to give him his share. Brown said, "I gave him 2.5, said it's all I've got, the cops are already talking to Lionel and I'm not going back." His evidence will continue tomorrow.
A spectacular performance, but getting there takes a lot of work. And St. Petersburg Ballet Company is no exception, despite being one of the world's leading performance groups. And today they held a class with some special guests, local students who are winners and runners-up from the recent Newcastle Eisteddfod.
I learn like the standard with their technique and how good I have to get to be able to be in a company like this.
They watched on in awe as more than 40 dancers from Russia warmed up at the Marie Walton Dance Academy, one stop in their national tour taking in 25 destinations. The classical love story is a favourite around the world, and the 2.5-hour show opens at the Civic Theatre tomorrow night before going on to Canberra on Sunday.
This afternoon's official announcement of Newcastle United's major sponsor was hardly a surprise. 15,000 Novocastrians got the exclusive on Friday night. But self-confessed league boy Lloyd Scott today revealed why he signed on, crediting the 3-year deal to Marathon Stadium and Con Constantine.
I'll be quite upfront and say I met Con for the first time last Thursday afternoon at 2:30, and at 3:30 in the afternoon we shook hands on a deal worth over $300,000.
That's $100,000 a year plus printing and office supplies, and he's already talking about staying for longer. United, meanwhile, heads off tomorrow for Friday's game against Auckland, and it seems the recent signing of ex-Kiwi international Chris Sorosic has come in handy.
I think it's fair to say he's been in consultation with Lee this week, give him an idea of the formation they'll play, what to expect. There might be a couple of new names that we haven't seen before.
And no news yet on reports that ex-breaker Harry James could be joining the side.
I know Lee's been talking to, well, he's probably been talking to one or two in Sydney. Whether anything's come of that, I'm not too sure. I couldn't tell you.
While it may have put a smile on the faces of the dementia sufferers and some of the aged population in Toronto, the belly dancer today was to entertain the carers, not the patients. It's all part of what's been called Indulgence Day and is designed to say thank you to those who care for ill and elderly.
It's good food, good company, and it's just saying to the carers, we care for you as well.
And even a back massage wasn't out of the question today, a payback for 12 months' worth of volunteer work.
I think it's not until they need a carer do they recognise what care is done in the community. It is the backbone of the community. I mean, if we are a non-caring community, we will be a very, very sad lot.
Indulgence Day is now receiving state government support, raising awareness about the jobs done by carers and funding their services.
Our government has put in, as a project, $12.9 million over the next 4 years to make sure that we can get all the things in place that carers need.
Adam Harper, NBN News.
City-based students were in Taree looking for a rural perspective on town planning, and the local council was more than happy to point them in the right direction. After an initial briefing, students hit the streets, asking questions and taking notes as part of a land use survey and a review of plans for the city centre.
The second one is in relation to the hospital. Council has been very keen to look at the prospects of a special uses zoning around the hospital. With the upgrade of the hospital facilities, there's been increasing demand for medical practitioners and specialists and other services to locate around the hospital.
And they're all issues these students might not have discovered as part of their usual studies.
There's really little emphasis on rural issues, and it's very important that the students get a taste for rural as well as urban issues.
While the information gathered from today's study is valuable to both council and the students, it's also hoped the diversity of issues involved in planning in towns such as Taree will encourage more people to return to regional areas when their studies are complete. Matt Carden, NBN News. Thanks to more than $400,000 in additional funds, students at the Christian Community School in Taree will soon be leaving the old art block and entering a new creative centre for learning.
We'll have to obviously add about another $400,000 to that grant by way of borrowings, but we want to replace our current home science facilities, our art block, our music block.
The expansion is good news for students and will help the school meet growing demand.
They're starting to get dated and teaching changes, and I think that these will certainly allow the gifts that those students have to be developed in this way.
Meanwhile, schools in the Hastings are also set to benefit from the latest round of funding.
In the two projects in Port Macquarie, the Heritage Christian School and also the Seventh-day Adventist School, both capital works projects revolve around the expansion of facilities, building new classrooms.
Matt Carden, NBN News.